Hello, everyone, and welcome to another lockdown interview. On today's interview, I am delighted to be joined by Irish star Nicolas Roche, who rides for Team Sunweb. Nico has ridden for most of the big teams in the peloton and has plenty of success to his name. Most recently, he actually won a stage in the Digital Tour de Suisse. However, he has also finished top 5 in the Vuelta Espana and won 2 Vuelta Espana stages as well. And he's also won the overall at the Route du Sud, where he beat Alejandro Valverde. And he has also been a support rider for Alberto Contador and Chris Froome. Notably, he was part of Froome's 2015 Tour de France win. So many things to discuss, so enjoy. How are you, Nico?
Hey, good. How are you? Good to talk to you.
Good. Whereabouts are you right now?
I'm in Monaco. So I've been in Monaco now since, over 2 months, since the beginning of March.
So what's kind of the lockdown situation in Monaco? Because we've seen, I've seen pictures of Gilbert out riding recently on Twitter. So I don't know if that...
Yeah, so until May the 4th, it was full lockdown. So not allowed to go out. You needed paperwork to go for groceries. It was 1 hour a day restrictions. It was full lockdown. But since May the 4th, so just over a week now, you were allowed to train within Monaco, which is quite small, but at least, I even saw you today on Strava, Puccio managed to get like 3 or 4 hours within Monaco. What I did is I kind of did like 2.5 to 3 hours in the morning on the ergo, and then just do a symbolic 1 hour in the afternoon to kind of round up to 4 hours, because there was still quite some traffic because most of the offices reopened in Monaco last week. So to stop at every traffic light and turn around in circles, I thought it was a bit, I might as well keep on training on the ergo. But since Monday the 11th, we are now allowed to go to France for training. So obviously now we're back on our kind of usual training roads. We still not can't go into Italy, which I think most of us always kind of prefer to train on that side. But unfortunately, the border in Ventimiglia is closed for foreigners for now. So we have to stick to the roads in France, which are fine. I mean, there's loads of mountains, Madone and all that. But just for a change, like I usually did, like half and half, about 3 trainings in France and then 3 in Italy.
You were speaking about your ergo. You made headlines because you won a stage in the Digital Tour of Swiss. How was that whole event? You were saying how you trained for that event specifically.
Yeah, it was good. I made it like a real personal challenge. It's obviously the big racing is in months. So even if I was tired or run down, I still have loads of time to recover from it. But yeah, once the team kind of said, Nico, you'll be riding that Tour of Swift. Can you do 3 of the 5 stages? I said, yeah, that's it. And I had like 4 to 5 weeks, and kept my motivation, kept my focus. Also enjoyed, because it was like a challenge for me and I wanted to do good in them. It was like a bit of an ego thing. So I was like, all right, I'm going to prepare full on for these things and be ready and be competitive. So I was really, really pleased. But they're a sufferfest. I mean, every single one of them, I thought I was just going to die on the bike,
How do you keep yourself motivated on the bike? Did you use Swift or anything when you were training?
For training? So
Yeah.
obviously for Be Cool, obviously when we did the Tour of Flanders, I used once or twice their program as well, because there are slight differences.
Yeah.
Then most days I rode on Swift, and then the same when we came closer to the races on Ruby, I also did some training on Ruby, because just the way that the resistance comes when you hit the climb or whatever, they're all very different. So it's all it was just to make it, or to adapt easier. It was just a lot easier if I actually trained on it. So when we got closer to Tour Swiss, I did a lot more training on that Ruby program and did some recons. And like I said, I took it seriously, but it was fun because that's all I had to do. It was or Netflix or be on the home trainer. So at least I was burning some calories to be able to enjoy an ice cream or a glass of wine here and there.
It's just a bit disconcerting seeing you going up the mountain and then you would see like a car zooming past you.
Yeah.
On the simulation.
The first time I was on Ruby, that was my first thing. It was like, oh, there's traffic. And then they gave me kind of wide, broad shoulders, but I think we all had the same size avatar. But what I thought was funny was the ongoing traffic.
So you're kind of part of like Ireland have kind of had a resurgence in riders with you, Sam Bennett, Phil Dignan when he was around, Ryan Mullen. How does that feel to be part of that resurgence of cycling for Ireland?
Yeah, it's been great. In order, obviously, I was kind of myself and Philip were the start of the kind of modern generation. 16 years ago now, and then Dan quickly came up 2 years after that.
Dan, but Dan.
And yeah, and then a couple of years after, Sam was in the middle, and then Ryan came, and now Eddie. And it was also that. Oh, Connor, sorry, was there also. Connor Doon was also there a few years. So there was that there was a point where it was good to see so many young guys come up. Obviously, when the Ampost team folded, that was a bit of a setback for a lot of the Irish guys. But then the Aqua Blue team came up. There was also, we can't forget, Bramir, 4 times Irish champion. So there was kind of a bit of a start of Irish cycling growing back again into the professional ranks. I mean, we were all kind of climber-ish and getting results, but apart from Dan, who was just a little bit stronger than myself and Phil when it came to classics and one-day races. But then when Sam came and started winning more often and winning sprints, and at the end of the day, even if at the beginning he was getting results on smaller races, but he was winning professional races, and it creates a bit of vibe. And now, obviously, look at him now; he's like 4 or 5 stages in the Giro, and he's a superstar. So it's really class to see how our cycling has developed over the last couple of years, and how myself, Phil, Dan initially were the first ones to try and bring it up, because the 3 of us have fought so many years with helping bringing up the federation, trying to make them change things, because they were kind of stuck in a moment where they hadn't evolved since the 90s. And it was like, right, we need to do this because this is how it's happening now in professional cycling. We need to evolve, we need to support us. And obviously they did, and they put as much effort as they could, because when we're going to Worlds, we're going with guys, or the 3 of us had won stages in Grandtours. There was 3 Irish professionals, and the 3 of us had won stages in the Vuelta. So there was a moment where we were capable of winning these big races, and it was important to try and follow us as well. So then they started bringing more staff, but more professional staff, not only volunteers, which obviously I want to say a big thank you to the volunteers, but it's also quite limited in their knowledge when it comes to a big race. They're often more fans than professional in what they do. But lucky they're there, because for years they saved us and helped us. But there was a moment where it was kind of limited. And once we started going a bit more into professionalism, because at the beginning, I used to pay for my mechanic, Dan used to pay for the masseur, and we'd share a few costs. The federation would put a little bit in, and that's the way it worked, and that's the way it needed to do. We all needed to kind of to help each other out and bond together. And it was great to have on one side us that were showing that we were willing to help the federation to help us, and the federation appreciated that we were helping. So we all kind of grew up together. And today, the work that's been done in the Fed, but not only in the road, look on the track. The development of the guys and women on the track is huge, and it's great to see how Cycling Ireland has developed. Back home in Ireland, the mountain bike, the cyclocross, everything is slowly but surely going up. I even know, on a different side, it's a different federation, but I even know triathlon is something that's really, really trendy at the moment in Ireland. So in generally speaking, it's great to have been part of kind of one of the little cliques that help everything go towards kind of modern cycling Ireland.
So how did you get into cycling? And we will go on to who your father is as well. How did you kind of get into cycling? Because some people, when their dad does really well, they might not want to do it. Did you kind of see him and get inspired? Or
well, I always said, when I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a cyclist. And lately during this lockdown, I've been doing a few of old photos and vintage posts. And everywhere I am when I'm a kid, I'm on a bike or in a cycling jersey or in a cycling t-shirt, or my teddy bears are the line from Tour de France. So there is a point where it would have been very difficult for me not to go that way. But look, my parents, they didn't want me to start young. Back in the days, it was you'd start cycling when you're 12 or 13. So until then, I did cross country running, and then went into soccer, and then eventually went into rugby. And then at the same time, when I was 12, then I started doing a little bit of everything. And then eventually, when I was 15, I was in Blackrock College in playing rugby, and at a friend's birthday party, I tore my cruciate ligaments, and obviously one of the downfalls was I couldn't play rugby anymore or soccer. But the good part was the rehab for cruciate ligament is cycling, so that threw me back on the bike straight away. And so that happened in April or March. So I was out till about May or June, I'd say June. So, and then I moved back to France that summer, and I started training here in France, and I won almost all of the races at the second part of the year. It was like, all right, now I realize that when I'm not playing rugby 5 days a week, I'm actually not a bad cyclist. So that was kind of the click of saying, all right, now I'm going to focus only on cycling. And when the season ended the year after, France back in the time, 99, 2000s, they weren't as big in rugby as now. That was the start of their kind of growth in terms of rugby. So when I moved to south of France, especially in Nice, rugby wasn't that popular. So there was no rugby teams anyway that were competitive enough where I felt, especially being in Blackrock College, I wanted to go somewhere good. And I said, all right, I'm just going to stick to cycling now. Because there was a plan where I could get an operation with my knee and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no. And they told me if I continued cycling, I didn't need an operation. So I said, all right, that's it. I'm not going to get an operation on my knee, and I'm just going to continue cycling and won't chance it. And that was kind of one of the clicks. Obviously, there's a few clicks, because then a couple of years later, coming into junior, I won one of these World Cups in Belgium, and I was really competitive, junior too. And I thought, all right, this is where maybe I might have a future in the next couple of years. And then after that, in 2003, I talked to my dad, and I said, listen, I really feel I can turn pro. And my dad said he wasn't quite convinced at that moment, but we made a deal. So I went and worked with my dad for 6 months in the hotel, and then he gave me 6 months off to kind of give it a go. And after 4 months, I was stagiaire, and next thing I was getting results in the races and signed my contract straight away. So there was a couple of steps there, but it's also nice. There was moments where I could have chosen something else. So why did I choose cycling? I think also I was quite lucky that he had won everything back in his time. So even if I was going to be good, I was never going to be as good. Where I think if he was 8th and 10th in every race, more or less like I've been, it'd been, oh yeah, you were 8th here, you were 9th there, you're a little bit better. Where for me, I always said that, all right, he's in a different league, so I'm just going to do my own thing. And if I love cycling, I don't care that they compare me to, and people get tired of it, that obviously at the beginning there was high expectations, and it was easier to disappoint. Everybody thought that I was going to be the next big thing. And especially, like I said, when I was stagiaire, I already got a top 10 and this and that. So there was a lot of pressure on me. And obviously the first couple of years were a little bit difficult, although I won already a pro race in my second year. But it was all about, I love this thing. This is my life. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to try and do my own thing and be as good as I can with my own capabilities. And I didn't really care. I was, in a way proud. For me, it didn't matter. And even still today, when I go to races, sometimes speakers say, the son of Stephen Roche, blah, 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 but it just kind of goes over here. It's not something that I feel ashamed of. At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with having a dad world champion. I realized that very young, because when I was playing soccer, I was quite a decent striker. And the same, when I score a goal is because I was the son of Stephen Roche. When I went into running, and I think I was second in the Leinster Championships, and I was also a fast runner because I was the son of Stephen Roche. When I played rugby, I was also good in rugby, and I was also good in rugby because I was the son of Stephen Roche. So I was never going to win, So whatever I did, I was always going to be the son of Stephen Roche. So might as well accept it and move on and take it on with you. And look, there's always a good side and a bad side to the medal. So I said, well, might as well make the most of the good side and just try and forget about the backside as much as I can.
So you said you signed with your first team, which was Cofidis, which is like an amazing team to ride for. Such history and everything. How was it riding for them as like a neo pro?
Well, Unfortunately, it was a great team, but I don't have the best memories in Cofidis. I remember, having quite some argument with staff. I remember one day I wanted to ask for 26 because it was the first time that 26 cassettes were made. I remember the mechanic saying, "All right, Roche, are you thinking of climbing trees?" So that's kind of the response that I was getting. Where today you can ask for a 32 and have a 38 in the front. So at that moment, Cofidis was the great Cofidis, but they're still pretty much old school. And like I said, when I asked for 26, I was told, "Are you thinking of climbing trees or what?" But so, and then it was very kind of Nordic classics orientated team. Although they had some climbers and GC guys, but I didn't feel that it was a team where I wanted to settle. And when I had the chance, then I thought Credit Agricole was a better choice for my future.
Well, after Credit Agricole folded, you signed with AG2R, and that's that's where I first started following you. In 2009, you started your first Tour de France, which started just outside where you're living now. How was that whole first experience for you, being there, being at the Tour de France, and you won the National Road Championships as well for Ireland? So how was that?
Yeah, that was surreal. There was a possibility that I was going to ride the 2008 Tour de France already with Credit Agricole. I had just coming up to Tour de Suisse. I had won a race in Portugal, and I was second in Alcobendas, and I was really in good shape. And the team had said that I was on the long list for the Tour in 2008. With stress, there was my brother had cancer, a lot of things happening at home, and I ended up having ulcers about a week before Tour de Suisse, and I was hospitalized for 3 days. And obviously, then the team said, "All right, Nico, just don't worry, just recover and everything." So, so then this is why then they said because the plan was. That's why I wasn't doing the Giro, because I did the Giro in 2007, and the team said, "All right, this year we're going to see if you can manage to go for the Tour, and then if not, there's always the Vuelta afterwards." So that's kind of the typical reaction that happens to neo pros. It's like, or you're planning for the Giro, or if you're possible for the Tour, it doesn't matter if you don't do the Tour because there's always going to be the Vuelta afterwards. So anyway, I came out of that, and after a couple of weeks of training, was in good shape. Went to that altitude camp with my cousin Dan. That was fun. Then prepared for the Olympics, and I was pretty good in Region Wallon, and all these races, and started getting results. And then I went into the Vuelta with an open mind of trying to hang in to see where I could go in a GC, and I finished 12th or 13th, but just a couple of seconds off 12th, and only because one day I suffered in Andorra with altitude, and I lost a bit of time, or else I was very close to top 10. So I was quite happy, and I said, "All right, this is really what I think I need to work on, and this race is the race kind of that suits me." So from 2008, I discovered myself one as a more important GC rider, and then two, that I knew that the second part of the year was always going to be the part where I was going to perform better. And like, so 2009, that the team had said to me, "All right, Nico, you're in for the Tour this year." I said, "Okay, fine," but I had a very slow start. It was during the winter. I was quite heavy. I had, I wasn't really performing the way I should have. It was a very cold winter. I wasn't quite there yet. And then I started getting good again towards the Dauphiné and stuff like that. And the team said, "All right, you're on the long list for the Tour, so we'll tell you on the Monday." And then I won the nationals, and then that morning in the airport, I got a phone call saying, "All right, Nico, go back to Nice as soon as possible, because tomorrow, so Tuesday, you have a flight to go to Montpellier, where we're going to do the recon of the team time trial. You're riding your first Tour. Congrats." I was like, "Oh, wow." And that was it. So I got the news in the airport, flying back home to Nice at the time. So that was a great and unbelievable experience. And and then it was all the stress about, being here in Monaco. It was great because my mother, my father, everyone still lived around Nice, so it was quite close. I was in school quite close to here. So it was like, not home, but second best. And at that time, I always remember, because the stress of the jersey and everything, because until the presentation, like the jersey arrived by car and I got there about an hour before the team presentation. Until then, I had no jerseys and I was still wearing. I did the, you do like a whole video, and there's a riders presentation amongst the riders with ASO staff and all that, and then you go get ready, and then you go to the official team presentation. And I remember starting all that presentation in my normal kit because I didn't have the jersey yet. And then suddenly, as we were queuing up for the official presentation on the port in Monaco, then my jersey arrived from the BMA factory in Italy by car. So it was pretty cool little story.
What was it like being in a tour where Lance Armstrong had his comeback? Was that huge?
Yeah, it was huge back in the time. It was huge. Whatever, we all know what happened next, but at that moment when he was riding in the bunch, you just felt there was something around him, like he was untouchable. There hasn't been many riders I met in my career where, if you take all the stories aside, when you just see him in the middle of the bunch, there was just something different. And obviously the media attention, and I had ridden the year before when he did his comeback in Australia, I think. So I had ridden with him before, but that was pretty, especially, like I said, it was very special. And the whole media with him, with Contador, the duels, whatever, there was a lot to talk about them more than anything else. But it was quite. It was an experience. I can say I rode with Armstrong. I rode one race with Ulrich as well. So I have a few ticks in the box. I've done quite some lists down in terms of riders that I've raced against.
So the next year, you went back to the Tour de France and you were the leader, AG2R. And how was that tour for you? Because you seemed like you were in a really good form at that point.
Yeah, I was in a pretty good shape, and I was very close to getting a top 10. The first week I was flying. I was around 7th, 8th in GC. I did really well in the cobble stage. I was in the second group with all the GC guys apart from G and the 4 who G, Schleck, and was a Hushoff, the 3 that arrived in front, and Cancellara, no? Schleck, yeah. So we arrived for 5th place with Vinokurov and all these guys, and Wiggins, and I was in really, really good shape, climbing well, and also a bit more experience. And unfortunately, one day I had a puncture at the wrong time, no cars behind me, and I I lost 7 minutes because of that bloody puncture, and I dropped down to 14th or 15th in GC, and no, 16th in GC. I lost like 5 or 6 places that day in GC. And then the next few days, I fought my way back, and I managed to eventually finish 14th. But I was very disappointed because I felt that I should have been closer to top 10 already. And then I was quite happy. I went out there in really good form, got my first top 10 in the Classic in San Sebastian, and then went into the Vuelta as a GC rider, and there I managed to get 6th. So there was a bit more satisfaction. I shown that I could make a top 10 in the GC.
What was it like riding the Tourmalet stage and in the Tour that year with Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador battling at the front, and the Vuelta Espana stage with Horner and Nibali doing kind of the same thing?
I've had a lot of battles because it was also the Kobo and Froome battle, but also the Mosquera and Nibali battle in 2010 already. But yeah, there's been a lot of races where I've gone to, and there is always this kind of really rivalry between 2 riders that are really close in GC. It hasn't happened that often in the Tour actually, because the last couple of years has been a bit more straightforward in a way, but more likely in the Giro or in the Vuelta, it's quite often that there is that battle of 2 riders that are really going for the overall victory without crushing the opponents. And yeah, it was. I always remember it coming into. I think that stage I was 11th or 12th on top of Tourmalet, and I always remember. I think it was Fuslang and Schleck on one side, and then on the other side of the road it was Danny Navarro and Contador, and they were drag racing, sprinting up when we went through the climb at the bottom of the Tourmalet. And I was saying, all right, fasten seatbelt, Nico, hold your tempo, and see you at the top. But then obviously when I watched it on TV years after, it looked even more incredible because, you know, when you're there, I was just so focused, and bearing in mind that I still had that 16 or 17K to the top. So I was really just kind of focused, not going too deep, not getting carried away, because these guys were putting the pressure from the bottom, and kind of making sure I was dragging down, but not too much. And when I looked at it on TV again, I was like, all right, there was no chance.
Were you keeping like to a certain power, or were you using heart rate at that point?
No, at that moment I had no parameter. Parameter came later for me. I actually did my first race with a parameter in 2013.
So in 2012, in the Tour de France again, I keep going to the Tour de France because that's kind of where seems like you always aim towards. I'll come to more races, but you kind of you were riding for AG2R again, and you kind of witnessed firsthand the rise of the Sky team on the Plage del Bilfi. What was that day like? Did it kind of just shake the whole peloton?
At that stage, not yet. And especially, I think that day I was still quite good. I think I might have been top 10 also on that stage. So for me, I was just kind of keeping in mind that I was in a good place for GC and doing my own thing. What I realized then was a couple of weeks later, actually, in some of the other stages, when they were just controlling in a manner that we hadn't seen this in years. You know, when there was groups of 30, 40 riders and they had 7. But it was not particularly on the Planche de Belfi stage, where we did see a Froome Wigo show, but more as a whole team when they were controlling some of the stages. And it was also the first time that we saw all this kind of freedom to leave breakaways and just control in the back. Because when Team Sky were riding a couple of years ago, it was great. If you're a breakaway rider that was further down on GC and out of trouble, you can go in the breakaway. All they cared was their own GC battle. And there was groups of 25, 30 riders. If you had the power to go into the breakaway, it was fine. And they gave a lot of opportunities, where years before that, it was so controlled for the stage win for the big guys that it wasn't about winning the Tour. It was also about winning stages, where at that moment when they came, they weren't interested so much in winning stages yet. It was more about winning the Tour. And I remember 2012, I was thinking like, wow, I don't know how many breakaways arrived, because I was thinking, you know, I was doing my stats of how many top 10s I could get in the Tour. And every time there was 10 guys in the breakaway. So we were arriving for 11th or 12th. And so I was like 3rd or 4th in the back with the GC guys, but I wasn't getting my top 10s for my statistics. So I always remember kind of saying, all right, Team Sky, ride for the win. Let me get my top 10s.
In 2013, you changed to Saxo Tinkoff to work with Bjarne. What was kind of the decision to do that? Like, what attracted you to the team?
I wanted to see something different. I had been now at that point 8 years in France, and there was a moment where, you know, you especially back in the days, it was so much about, you know, foreign teams this, foreign team that, and in terms of having a parameter, TP bike at home, and all these little details. So I just thought that I was at the stage of my career where I was old enough to go, and enough experience to try something new. And you know, when I got a phone call from Bjarne saying, you know, he was going to build the best team in the world, and we're going to win the Tour with Alberto, and I was going to be one of the important guys in the team, and that he was going to help me progress and coach with the coach, you know, help me towards being a top GC rider for the Vuelta, blah, blah. I was like, wow, this is the perfect plan. It's like, all right, I'm going to win some races at the start of the year through somebody else, because I always kind of struggled at the start of the year. And it was like, right, so start of the year, I worked full gas, helped one of the best riders at the time win races, and I found something challenging. And then the second part of the year, where I'm always kind of in shape and ready, I get my own chance after the Tour. So for me, it was like a perfect balance. So, and also kind of, I wanted something bigger and just fighting for. At that point, I had already like 5 or 6 top 15s and then 1 top 10 in GCs. And I was just like, all right, it's going to be difficult for me to like, I found that my place in the Tour was maybe between 8th and 12th, although I actually never finished top 10, but that was more or less my level at the time when I taught. And in the Vuelta, I knew that eventually, if things went right, I could podium it. I didn't. I was 5th and 6th because twice things didn't go right. But I kind of knew where my limits were, and I was like, all right, but let's look greater. Like, I don't want to be chasing top 10s of my career, because winning races, I felt that I wasn't one of those big GC team leaders who could win so many races per year. And I was just a rider who was strong, who could get results, and I was getting many top 10s, but I wasn't getting those big results that were needed. So I was thinking, all right, if I go maybe and now ride for somebody else, I also get chances to go in breakaways again. And now that I'm stronger, I might win from the breakaway. But also then I also get the chance to play GC. So it was a perfect combo when Bjorn said, all right, you work towards the Tour for Alberto, and then you'll also have your chance on different races. Plus, you can also be a GC rider. So I was like, oh, yeah, sure.
What was it like riding for Alberto? Did you speak, because you're multilingual, what language were you speaking on the road?
Initially, we spoke mainly Italian because he speaks perfect Italian. And at the time, I was living in Italy. And I had just moved actually it's the year I moved back to Monaco. But until then, I was living in Italy. And that year, then I studied Spanish. And then from there on, we just spoke Spanish.
So what was it like riding in a race for him? Was he very, like, people don't really understand how it is riding up a mountain. Do you guys communicate a lot together, or is it just orders from a radio?
No, it's feeling. It's, at the end of the day, we're professional. You know what you need to do. It's a feeling. It's a bond. That's why we do training camps. That's why we do all these altitude camps. That's why we do all this thing, and that's why you need to race with the tour group before the tour as well. It's all about having a feeling, and then, like I said, that's why also the importance of having good riders and with experienced riders. And this is why I also have a job still now. It's because there's things where you don't need to be told what you do. You just know what to do. And moreover, when you work for a GC rider, is you know what to do, but also when to do it. There's moments where you don't need to be head in the front and killing yourself. There's moments where you can actually back off and be in 15th or 20th position. And there's moments that are key where you need to be killing yourself to make sure that you go into that corner in 3rd or 4th position with Alberto on the wheel or whatever. So there was a lot there, and I learned a lot with Michael Rogers, who had been doing that at Sky, and has been doing that for already a couple of years. And just with talking with him, I was very often in the room with him. We'd always talk, and like I said, I learned a lot about how to manage the team. But also, you know what, it's easier in a way to go from team leader to helper, because I was doing what I wanted somebody else to do when I was in that position. I don't know if you understand. Yeah. So when I was sitting in 4th position, I was like, all right, where's my guy in front of me sitting on the right side because the wind's coming from the right? And so when I could see Alberto sitting there, I just knew that if I was in a position, this is what I would have wanted, because I was in that position before. So I think it was easier for me going from team leader to road captain than going the opposite, because I knew what I needed, and I knew what he would need, because if I was in his position, this is what I would have wanted.
So the Vuelta where you were the leader, it was very quick before you took a stage win. You won on stage 2. Yes. How was that stage? It looked absolutely amazing on TV.
Yeah, it was it was beautiful scenery, all right. Galicia is spectacular, but the stage was good. It was quite short. I remember it was like 170k, 180k, but very dynamic, with a really nice climb. And I just remember I was in really, really good shape. I was just back from altitude camp with Roman Kruziger, and I remember Roman saying, "Nico, you have to level for top 5," and I was all mentally ready for it. And in the first day in the team time trial, I was flying. I knew I was in the shape of my career that far. And the morning of the stage, actually, Bjorn came up and took me by the shoulders and says, "Nico, today is yours. You must believe it. Today we ride. Today we put you in position." We did, because we were there a couple of days before and it was close to the hotel, so we actually did the recon of that stage. And Bjorn, from already the day one, told me that it was something I could potentially win. So for 3 days, Bjorn was telling me I could win it, I could win it, I could win it. And then that morning I was like, "Nico, you can win it. Today you win." And not often that happened in my career actually, but that day when my legs were really good and Rafa and Roman did an amazing job to keep me in position. And then when I saw Koenig go and I felt that Movistar weren't running fast enough, I was like, all right, if I feel the pace is not fast enough and there's only 30 riders left and Koenig is gone, I think I should give it a go. Because I knew that 500 meters to the finish, it was all downhill. But I knew also that I could do 1K at so many watts and come back and maybe do this. And so I chanced it. I said, all right, I have nothing to lose, because even if I explode, I knew that if I was caught before the drag down, I wasn't going to lose time. So I just said, all right, why not? It's 2K to go, or not even. I think it was 1K to go, 1.5K to go. And I said, I'm just going to chance it. And I went, and then it worked out really good. So I was quite proud of myself. I won the race. Like, I always wanted to win a bike race. So I was, for me, it's one of my good and most memorable wins.
Through that whole tour, you kind of you held 5th position, but you could have very nearly have taken a podium spot. Apart from, was it one bad day where the weather was really cold?
Yeah, in Andorra. And not even a bad day. It was a bad climb, because on the second last climb we had dropped Valverde, we had dropped most of the big guys, and I kind of got, once again, a little bit with not unexperienced, because I was experienced, but just wanting to do too good. I remember, like, it was -2 and snowing, and next thing I take my before the descent to hit the last climb, I was so obsessed that when we hit the bottom, it was like 2K, and then we go up to the finish. And I said, all right, now it's time to take my knee warmers off, and I started stripping, and there was only about 10 or 12 riders left at that moment. And I started stripping on the descent, and by the time I got to the bottom of the descent, I was completely frozen. And next thing, I had, my legs just were like 2 rocks, and to the point where we had like 2 minutes on Valverde, and Valverde just passed me and put another 3 on top of me, and I lost 6 minutes and 6K, and that was dramatic, and that really killed my podium. Without that day, I would have had the level to podium. I was very disappointed, but that's cycling. There's days where the guys, when it's 40 degrees, have cramps and lose a couple of seconds, and I'm flying. And unfortunately, one day, because I took my knee warmers off too early, I just completely froze.
Would you see that Vuelta, despite that mishap, like being your proudest moment? Or
yeah, but also, look, in 2010, I was also close to being on the podium. I think I'm only like not even a minute away from podium. And the same, only because it was a 50K flat TT, and at the time Kyoto didn't do any Tanchal bikes. We had triathlon bikes, and no power meter, nothing. So all these big guys from the big teams all had power meters, and I'm there with my heart rate. And obviously it was a headwind out and a headwind back in, a tailwind back in, and basically I was flying out with the headwind, and obviously I just wasn't pacing myself. I was just going on feeling. And once we turned back and we had to go tailwind and really get the power back down, I took myself in the headwind, and I lost a lot of, I think I lost like almost a minute in the last like 15-20K coming back, because I completely exploded. I just had, if I had energy in my ears to pedal, I would have used them. But I just remember those 10-12 kilometers coming into the finish. And also mentally, I started to struggle, because I felt that I was dropping time. And we were, at that moment, I think we were like 5 or 6, and like a minute 30 to 2 minutes in GC. So losing a minute on that TT was dramatic. And actually, I dropped down from 4th in GC down to 7th or 8th. And then the next 2 days, next 2 mountain stages, I came back to 6th eventually.
So in 2014, you did the Giro d'Italia, which was quite special because it was starting in Northern Ireland and it went down to Ireland. Yeah. What was that like for you?
That's one of the best days in my career. When I went on the podium, I had the warmest welcome ever. I was like a rock star in Belfast. It was unbelievable, and every time I talk about it, I still get goosebumps. For me, it was. I know it's only a team presentation, but it remains one of the most emotional moments in my career.
What was kind of the goal of the team in that Giro? Because you did really well. Mike Rogers won 2 stages.
Myself and Rafa were GC men. And then I unfortunately was caught up in that massive crash when Bling won and Cadel Evans took pink. And I lost 25 minutes in that crash. So yeah, because the bunch, I think it was about 80 or 90 riders who crashed. I was at the very front of the crash. And unfortunately, there was no access to the front of the bunch. So by the time I got a spare bike, because my bike was completely destroyed, the race was long gone. Because imagine there was a 1-lane road, so cars couldn't overtake. So they were stuck behind rider 198, and I was rider 15 or 20. So all the peloton had a new bike by the time they got to me, and I was just sitting on the side of the road with a bike split in two. So that was my 2014 Giro dream gone. Because at that stage, I think myself and Rafa were like 7th and 8th in GC after 10 days or 8 days, and the two of us were in good shape. But I think Rafa went on to finish 5th in GC. But then after that, I just went on chasing breakaways and got a nice place in Zoncolan and a good place in Monte Europa. Kind of made up for it a little bit.
So you've ridden all of like the big climbs in cycling, the Angliru, Zoncolan, and multiple Tour de France climbs. Which one would you say is the hardest?
One that you haven't said, which is called Quinto Negro. In 2011 Vuelta. I think Cataldo won there. 2011 Vuelta. Or 2012. No, I think it's 2011 Vuelta. Quinto Negro. That is one of the most brutal climbs. I remember in the evening, so there was the Eritrean rider had to stop and puked and he almost fainted. A Tepstra walked up. It was ridiculous. It was like we did this 15 to 20k climb up this long valley. Like it wasn't the most difficult climb, but it was long. And the next thing we had like 7 or 8k, but some parts were like 30%. And obviously after 200k stage, so it was brutal. That was for me one of the hardest climbs I've done.
What's your favorite climb of these big climbs?
I don't know now, to be honest. I mean, there's so many and there's so many. I think, it's always the same is when it's always easier to favor a climb when it works out for you. For example, every time I've been up Alpe d'Huez, something happens. I've never did a good Alpe d'Huez climb in my career in any of the races. Where, for example, Tourmalet, I've had good Tourmalet stages. So I like Tourmalet because many times if we finish on top, apart from last year, because last year I was in the gruppetto because I sat up to save a bit of energy. But rather than that, I think your favorite climbs mainly depends on how you performed in it. Regardless of everything, one of the most majestic climbs have to be the Stelvio. Even Passo Gavia is one that I absolutely love. Like I'm a massive fan of all that area. Every year I go training in Livigno, and I just love these climbs. Passo Bernina, Passo La Stelvio, Passo Umbral, Passo Gavia. They're all the same mountain, but even on the other side, Albula Pass in Switzerland, they're all these climbs that they're just breathtaking.
In 2015, you then moved to Team Sky. What was that culture like to get into Sky? Could you feel a difference?
Yeah, it was once again a new experience, new setup. It was the first time I was in a 100% English team. It was like being a Spanish rider who wanted to go to a Spanish football player who wanted to go to Real Madrid. It was like, all right, there's a team where I really want to go in my career is this team for a couple of years and put a tick in the box as part of my experience, and which I did. And I've matured a lot when I was at Team Sky. I had a great relationship with the guys. A lot of my friends were there, G and Richie and all these guys. It was cool. It was a really strong group, and I learned just once again to push a little bit more my knowledge in terms of experience. And it was a great experience. I remember the year 2015. Until the tour, every race we've been to, we won it. If I didn't win with Froome, I won with Richie. So it was class. It was just part of something huge. And then winning the tour was an experience that was that was undescribable. It was amazing.
You went to the Vuelta that year again, and you won a stage, beating
Yeah.
Elia in a sprint. How was that stage compared to winning the first stage?
Well, very, very different, because once again, I went to the Vuelta and really, really good shape, and I was fourth or fifth in GC until the rest day. But the day before the rest day, I crashed twice in that stage, and it was just too much. I It was a stage in Catalonia, but until then, yeah, I was fourth or fifth in GC, and I could see myself finishing again top 10 or very close to top 10 in GC, or maybe even better at that point. And because first stage I was third, I went off in the last climb with Dumoulin and Chavez, so I was close. And I was also thinking, at that point, I thought I was going to win it. I was like, Chavez is a Colombian neo pro that I've never heard of, and Dumoulin is a TT guy. So I was like, this is good. We had just popped Quintana, so Quintana went across to us, and then we dropped him. My cousin was a couple of 100 meters behind, so I didn't want him to catch me. So I was like, all right, all I have to do is out sprint a near pro and drop a TT guy. Obviously, things were very different. Chavez became Chavez, and Dumoulin became Dumoulin. But at that moment, none of them were as famous or popular, and I thought I was gonna have that win in the bag. And I attacked about 600 meters to go, and it was really steep. And then next thing, Chavez went with Dumoulin, and I just stayed there and finished third on the stage. But anyway, uh, in after that, I had this massive crash, and I spent the whole week really, really, really suffering. And riders were telling me, Nico, go home. Nico, go home. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go home. I worked so hard to be in this shape. I know that if I get back to the shape I had at the start of the Vuelta, it would take healing. But I know I had nothing broken. It was just really, really massive cuts and bruises. And I was like, I know that once the swelling goes down, it could take 5 days, 4 days. I will be back to my top level that I started the Vuelta with, and I could win a stage, and I want to win a stage. I need that. And that win was special because of my commitment, because it was easier for me to go home and get ready for some other race and get my wounds to heal. Where no, it was every day I was fighting, and the first 4 or 5 days I was struggling in the gruppetto, trying to recover as much as possible, not go too deep. And then eventually I started feeling all right. This is where I'm starting to go good again. Even the time trial, I couldn't put the skin suit on. I had to cut the skin suit on my arms because I couldn't get around the bandages. So, and then I did it okay-ish time trial, considering that I did it easy. And then I felt, all right, I think the next few days I can go back in the attack again. And that day I just knew I was going to go in the attack, and it was a stage for a breakaway, and I kind of had a feeling that it was a stage where I could do well, and it worked out. So I was once again pretty proud of myself, but more for my determination than anything, because like I said, at that point I should have gone home, but no, I was like, no, I can get something out of this. Vuelta is not over, and I don't abandon the Grand Tour unless something bigger happens.
In 2016, in your second year, you did the double at the national championships. Was that a really proud moment for you to be able to have the national jersey twice?
Yeah, that was great, because I was chasing the national champs for a couple of years, and I was struggling to get it. I was second, third, fourth, whatever. But just there, I knew I was in good shape coming out of the Giro, and it was a good moment to get the jersey. And obviously, you need more than good shape to win the nationals. You need a bit of luck. You need everything to fit in place. It's also with timing. And for once, all kind of went together, and yeah, it was great. Plus, it was my local club who organised it when I was back in Ireland. My granny was there, my whole family was there. It's just down the road from where I live. It was everything was just so special.
You also did the Tour of Yorkshire that year, and a lot of it made of like the fans of Yorkshire and also the hard racing in the Yorkshire Moors. You did really well that year on the final stage, which started in Middlesbrough. So I saw you coming out of the Team Sky bus that day. What was that stage like? Because it seemed like really hard racing. It was a wet day, and it seemed like you, as Team Sky, were really going for that win and set it up pretty well.
Yeah, there was myself and Peter Norddog were the team leaders there. But the guys, I mean, I remember Gianni Moscon and I mean, was there a standard as well? Rowe and Pete Kennett. Kennett did, I think he rode like 50k or something like that. He was oh no, it was yeah. Well, Gianni Moscon did, but the one who started the crosswind was the Dutch sprinter who's now in Van Poppel, Danny. And when we went for it, it was like, all right, now we're going for it, and it just never stopped. We just went, and once Danny pulled out, somebody else took over, and then Gianni Moscon took over, and then Pete Kennett took over, and then I was like, right, now we need to attack. so then I attacked. And unfortunately, I attacked alone, and I dropped everybody on the last climb. And I jumped over a speed bump, and my chain fell. So that's how, kind of, unfortunately for me, Buckler came back at the bottom of the descent, and then he smartly sprinted me.
Yeah, I was really annoyed when I saw Buckler join you.
I was very annoyed still, and the other day, you know, your memories come up, and obviously it was only like the equivalent of 3 years ago, but yeah, 4 years ago, but first weekend of May. So most recently, I saw that photo again, and when I finished the line, I wasn't gutted. I was just angry because I should have won that race. I should have, and it was also my fault. I wanted a 32 in the back, and I wanted a 54 chainring, but it just means that you have to change the derailleur. It's a longer chain. So it also means that if you're 54.11, there's the chain kind of flips up and down. So there's a chance that the chain falls on the right rather than the left. And this is exactly what happened. And the chain fell on the pedal, and I had to kind of get it back on. And just because, like I said, you needed a longer chain, but that was my mistake. I should have kept or 30 or not put a 54. But in my opinion, I wanted to just have that extra, just with the crosswinds, with the descents, to make it to the finish, to make a difference.
You also did a very good GC ride at the Tour of Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi Tour.
Yeah.
What was it like going to Abu Dhabi?
Same, you know, I was quite prepared. Had a good couple of days. Tour of Britain was good preparation. And then I knew the shape was good. I was flying in August. Unfortunately, then I had pneumonia coming back from the Olympics, and I was out for a week, and I couldn't ride the Vuelta. I was really gutted. I put so much effort in preparing for the Vuelta. But once again, just kept the motivation high. I said, nope, all the work's going to come back, and I'll go to the last race of the year. And although I was leaving Team Sky, I'm always someone who commits to everything I do. And when the team said, we need you in Abu Dhabi, I said, okay, fair enough, I'll be ready. And when I got there, then the guys were good. I had Kiato, and we had a good fun team there, and they put me in perfect position at the bottom. And all I had to do then was kind of go with the flow. And when Tanner went, I went chasing him, and I could, you know, already quite from far out, I knew that I wasn't kind of capable of beating him. And I kind of tried to then just pace myself to make sure I was at least going to secure second.
Been to the World Championships quite a few times, both as a junior and a senior. How is that experience for you, representing Ireland, and which has been your favorite place so far?
It's always been an amazing experience. It's something that every year I always push. Like, I think I've only missed, or in probably now 17 or 18 World Championships. I guess I've only missed 2 or 3 maximum. So I've really committed to try and go as many nationals that I can, World Championships that I can. I've had a few good experience, better experiences, bad experiences. I've had a bit of everything. Which ones were the best? Hard to say. Today I couldn't pick one, actually.
Did you enjoy Innsbruck with Hurl, the crazy climb?
Yeah, but that wasn't special. That I didn't like. I was really tired from the Vuelta. I just hadn't recovered. and the TT was the worst TT of my life, and the road race, I think I was 50th or 60th, which I wasn't good at all. I didn't enjoy it where I was in Innsbruck. Bergen was probably a good one, although in the road race I should have been in that front group, and I missed it barely because of the crash. But at least in Bergen I did a really good time trial, so I keep Bergen probably as a thumbs up.
So you then changed to BMC. What was it like riding for BMC?
Yeah, then I had this challenge with Richie to try and challenge Team Sky and whatever for the tour. So that was also something different. I didn't quite settle in BMC. The atmosphere was great. I had loads of good friends in the peloton and friends in life that were in that team. But just as a team, with management and staff, well, especially with management, I just didn't quite fit. And we had a lot of communications problems. And yeah, that was about it, I can say.
And now you changed to the team that you're on now. And last year, you had a very good season where you finished 10th in the Tour de Suisse, and in the Vuelta, it seemed like you were going to do a career high result, but a crash on stage 6 kind of was the misfortune.
Yeah, I think I was really happy with my move to Sunweb. Found lots of motivation and being always surrounded by such a young team just making me feel 10 years younger again, and it's been really, really good for me. It was a very brutal change from going to one of the most experienced teams to one of the less experienced teams in terms of riders. But I truly enjoy my time in Sunweb. Obviously, sometimes there are days that it's harder than others. But generally speaking, as I'm very happy with the team, with my position. I like working with the young guys. They listen to me. We have a good bond, with some better than with others. Once again. But I really enjoy being part of this team and the role that I have in this team. I feel that I'm more than a cyclist. I feel like I can bring something more than just power and results. I feel I can bring experience and share what I've learned over 15 years of professional cycling in terms of diets, training, positioning, reading of the race, but also my knowledge of the roads. And the thing is, it's one thing knowing all that, is one thing being willing to share it. And I actually enjoy when we're at the dinner table and they talk to me and ask me like questions like we have now, and I can go on, and I feel like one of those granddads who's just talking stories of 30 years ago.
So with this new revised UCI calendar, what's kind of your aims for the rest of the season?
No idea. We haven't talked about it with the team yet. They said first week of June, so I'm still. If you ask me out of the blue, without any consultation of the team, this what I would like to do personally, I would say my ideal program would be Tour Vuelta. I still think it's doable, and maybe a race if we need in October, because there's a lot of one-day races there as well to support the team. But that's what I want, not what the team wants. I think when we get back to, the team said they were going to think about things. It's a lot of work for a team to reorganize a whole schedule over 3 months, especially with the intensity of the races. You're going to have to make very specific choices. Some riders might have to miss out on the classics to ride the Giro, which comes first. So there's a lot of work for the team managers to organize things. But if I have to put my wish list, I would like to do a race before the Tour, obviously, and then Tour, Vuelta, and maybe a race in the middle to support the team all the way. But that's, like I said, this is just purely speculation and my wish list.
So coming down to the last few questions, you said you've ridden the Alpe d'Huez quite a few times. How do you compare that to the Alpe du Swift?
Well, I've done Alpe d'Huez today 4 times on the big ring. I couldn't do that in real life. But in terms of but in terms of online platform, it's amazing, because if you want to do a 50-minute or 40-minute effort, you just go there and go from the bottom, and well, actually, just under 40 minutes. I think today I did just under 40, and you can just do a proper threshold or zone 3 or torque. You can do everything on Alpe d'Huez. If you want to go fast, you can go fast. If you want to go easy and do it in 50 minutes, you can also take 50 minutes. If you want to do it in 36 or 37 minutes, you also can. So it's actually an amazing tool.
Who was your hero when you were growing up? like cycling hero wise?
Cycling hero. I was going to say Beckham, but
I don't think he's much use on a bike.
Beckham as a sport idol. I think he's nailed it all. But as a cycling hero, well, it's quite difficult for people of my generation to come up with a cycling hero 10 years after or 20 years after. But I guess back in the days when you're innocent and watching TV when you're 15, you know, there was initially Indurain, and then after that there was the Armstrong years, and later on then I can say already when I was professional, I used to idolize, you know, Stuart O'Grady and Torushov. They were the guys that I just loved. Somehow I always went for riders who were kind of more, well, apart from, you know, when I was a kid, like I said, Armstrong, but everybody was Armstrong. Of course, I wanted the Giro helmet and the Oakleys with the American flag on the side, and the Trek, and because that was the cool stuff at the time. But then growing up, I used to love Tour, and it was a great opportunity for me to work with him too.
All right, thanks for that, Nico. It's been a really interesting interview and a delight, to be honest. We'll look out for you in the revised calendar, and if you want to follow Nico, I'm going to put all the social media down below. And yeah, I just want to say thank you a lot.
No worries, thanks. Been a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
That's it for this lockdown interview with Nicolas Roche. If you're new to the channel, why not check out some of the other interviews I did, and subscribe if you haven't already to not miss out on any future videos. And as always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.